co-published the book with Heinemann, by then JBP's regular publisher. So now he changed course again and became known as a social commentator, a role that he undertook notably during the Second World War and on into CND. After my father's death in 1984, Michael Foot remembered him as the conscience of the country. Though never a member of the Labour Party, and not remotely a communist sympathiser, he disliked dogma of all kinds. His position was left of centre. As an old-fashioned socialist, he believed strongly in society. Indeed, a society in which everyone had a decent chance to fulfil his or her potential, unfettered by snobbish class distinctions and the restrictions of poverty. A society rich in generous humanity, which welcomed the differences between people, but related all activities and programs, economic or political, back to the people. This is the strength of his position as commentator. He was not an economist, a politician, an academic, a trade unionist, or a businessman. He was a writer and a human being, and could relate to people in an honest, straightforward way, enjoying them as characters, yet able to mock their foibles when necessary, while sympathizing with the wretched hand which life had dealt them. English Journey is dedicated to my mother and myself, to Thomas, whose England this is, for better or worse. But from those distant early 1930s, how much still resonates today? The 1930s were a bleak time, soiled by the First World War, marred by the Depression, and spoiling for the next war. But what is our excuse today? He liked to describe himself as woolly-minded, and I think this comes from two things. Firstly, his refusal to abide by any rigid dogma, which insists on dividing everything into black and white, and secondly, his humanity, which could detect the good and bad in most people or situations. In his fiction, he was not good at inventing villains. In his non-fiction, he had no hesitation in condemning the Nazis when the time came as out-and-out villains. But here, he blames the baser aspects of human nature for the mess and squalor the Victorians created and left scarring the countryside. Greed, selfishness, pomposity, and hypocrisy. I have often felt we needed much of the 20th century to pass before we could escape from the clawing influence of the Victorians. And he looked back joyfully to the vigour and merriment of the 18th century, for all its faults. And this is another of his themes, that life should be enjoyed, it should be fun. He so regretted the austerity following the Second World War, and thought the government failed in not providing more fun. As he says in the telling section on the battalion reunion, he considers himself more of a comic writer because he could never fail to see the funny side of much of life, and this from a man who had had more than his fair share of hardship. But here, when he feels he should condemn, he is boldly outspoken. If the recurrent theme of English Journey is that people deserve better, there are still glimpses of magic, as he truthfully describes what he saw and felt. Having recently visited Beverley myself, I was struck by his reaction to the town, delivered in a delicious turn of phrase. I was expecting Beverley, and yet, when it came, suddenly towering in that pretty rustic flatness, it was, as these things always are, an overwhelming surprise. To see Beverley Minster suddenly hanging in the sky is as astonishing as hearing a great voice intoning some noble line of verse. Chapter 11, pages 412 to 413. He writes so clearly, so vividly, with an easy rhythm to his prose. I have always found his non-fiction works contain